Will the marshal please swear the witness?
Please stand and raise your right hand. You solemnly swear that the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God? I do. You see it, please.
Could you please identify yourself for the record?
My name is Michael Fredericks. I'm a special agent with the Drug Enforcement Administration, currently assigned to Bogota, Colombia.
What is your present position in Bogota, Colombia?
I am a special agent with DEA. My primary duties involve liaison with the local counterparts, the Colombian National Police, and other various Colombian organizations, and intelligence gathering relative to narcotics trafficking.
Agent Fredericks, we've heard this morning from Assistant Secretary of State Thomas concerning raids in which the Colombian National Police and military are directed towards approximately 50 laboratories over the past several months in Colombia. I'd like to draw your attention to one series of raids upon those laboratories which occurred during the period March 10th of this year through October 15th of this year. You've given to the Commission a detailed statement surrounding that series of raids and other matters which I'd ask be made part of the record here. Was the initial one of that series of raids, beginning in March of 1984, conducted in an area known as Tranquilandia?
Yes, sir, that's correct. DEA received information on or about the 8th of March of this year that there was an ongoing laboratory complex situated in the remote jungles of southeastern Colombia. We passed that information to the Colombian National Police, who in turn mounted an operation directed against the raid and subsequent seizure of that complex.
And generally, what part of Colombia is the Tranquilandia area located in?
The gentleman's pointing on the map. It's near the Yari, a river in southeastern Colombia, some 175 miles from the nearest police outpost, San Jose del Guaviare, in the Department of Guaviare.
Where was the raid upon Tranquilandia mounted, and how was it conducted in general terms?
The forces were generally organized from the capital, Bogota. They were brought together, united in San Jose, and the general thrust of the operation was mounted from San Jose del Guaviare on the 10th of March. The initial raiding forces consisted of approximately 40 to 45 Colombian National Police officers. They utilized one fixed-wing de Havilland Twin Otter aircraft and two Bell 212 helicopters for the initial assault.
And during the course of the initial assault, did they receive ground fire?
Yes, they did. They flew into the area, and the magnitude of the complex was not really known prior to the actual raid. The estimates by the Colombian National Police were approximately 100 uniformed guerrilla resistors who were providing sniper fire and resistance to the raiding forces at the time of the raid. I might point out that at this time it was a little difficult to go right into the landing strip, because one of the methods the traffickers use is to cover the strip with 55-gallon drums, usually empty, of ether, formerly ether barrels, to prevent the landing of any aircraft on that strip that's not expected or wanted. So for this purpose, they will use the helicopters, go in, clear the barrels off the landing strip, and then the fixed-wing aircraft comes in as support. During this entire time, there was resistance, gunfire from these guerrillas.
Now, would you describe the size of the physical facility located at Tranquilandia, as well as its various components?
Tranquilandia itself had approximately a 3,500-foot airstrip that was carved out of the jungle undergrowth. It had a hard surface, gravel and sand mixture. Another 1,200 feet on one end of the strip and 2,000 feet on the opposite end of the strip had been cleared of jungle growth to permit the entry of the aircraft into the area, to make the strip actually usable for large aircraft. Approximately at the middle of the actual strip, perhaps 100 yards to the west of the midpoint in the strip, was a living complex. This complex consisted of a dormitory housing approximately 80 bunks, kitchen and eating facilities whereby approximately 30 people could be fed, and then a third building that was apparently for the administrators and possibly the pilots who would come in and out of the complex. It slept another 10 to 12 people. In this area, there were hog pens, chicken pens, so forth, a fully equipped kitchen. They had running water, flushing toilets, showers. Electricity was provided by diesel generators, and it was a self-contained living complex under the canopy of jungle growth. At one end of the strip, approximately a half to three-quarters of a mile away to the north, was the main laboratory complex, which in this way was geographically and physically apart from the living complex. There were 9 buildings in the laboratory complex, ranging from a storage area for the ether utilized in the processing, as we've heard in previous testimony, to the actual base to hydrochloride laboratory complex itself, resulting in cocaine hydrochloride being produced at that site.
And was this base camp area located in a remote jungle part of Colombia?
Yes, sir. To my best estimate, the nearest road in that area is perhaps 150 miles away.
So that all of this equipment, all of the chemicals, all of the makings which lead ultimately to the production of cocaine were required to be flown in to that location. Is that right, Agent
That's
Fredericks?
correct.
Now, during the course of the Tranquilandia raid, about which we'll see a video in a moment, was there found a handwritten map locating what appeared to be other laboratories located in the jungles of Colombia?
That's correct. To my right is an enlargement of a photograph that was taken of a pocket notebook that was found in the pilot's quarters, indicating that Tranquilandia was one of 6 different complexes within approximately a 60 to 70 mile radius of each other. Prior to the raid that was conducted on March 10th, we had no knowledge of these other complexes. We had intelligence that there was activity in the area, but we didn't know exactly where they were. Based on this map, continued operations were mounted to enable the National Police to raid each one of the other 5 complexes, identified as you see here as Nuevo Horizonte, Las Palmeras, Pascualandia, El Diamante, and the bottom one, you'll notice, has the notation RODI, Rodri, apparently. Other documents in the raid identify that site as Villa Coca, also known as Cocalandia, and we believe that that notation, Rodri, is directly tied to the owner of that complex, who was subsequently identified as a man named Rodriguez Gacha.
Now, during the course of the series of raids upon these other base camps depicted on this hand-drawn map, was there located still another base camp laboratories which came to be known as Loma?
Yes, sir. Subsequent to the initial raids during that week, March 10th to March 16th or 17th of March, a security force essentially was left at the base camp at Tranquilandia to ensure that traffickers and our guerrillas did not return into that area to continue their activity. As a result, San Jose del Guaviare, the city from which the raid was mounted, lies to the north. So in flying in and out of that area, maintaining the security force, yet another laboratory complex was found in the area the gentleman is pointing to north, and that was subsequently called La Loma. That was discovered on about April 4th of this year.
Did this series of raids provide additional insight into the ways in which the Colombian cocaine organizations dealt with each other, as well as the way in which they dealt with insurgent movements located within Colombia?
Yes, sir. As I indicated, there was a lot of documentation that was taken at this raid. Pascualandia.
Perhaps we can get to that in just a moment. Mr. Chairman, with your permission, we have a video of the second day entry into the Tranquilandia locations, showing the destruction of the various facilities, the composition of those facilities before their destruction, as well as some implements taken as a result of these raids linked to the insurgent movements in Colombia, which, with your permission, I would ask Agent Fredericks to narrate. It's approximately a 5-minute video.
This is an aerial view of the landing strip at Tranquilandia, flying into it from San Jose del Guaviare. You'll notice the jungle surrounding area. The one thing that's unique about all these complexes is the only thing visible from the air essentially is the landing strip itself. The laboratory complex, the living complexes are entirely covered by the jungle canopy in these areas. This is as the aircraft is landing. This film was taken from the inside of the Columbia National Police Twin Otter. It was one of the helicopters that was coming in. Now, throughout the first 2 days, possibly 2.5 days, there was erratic gunfire from the jungles. So the entire seizure, as it went on, was somewhat disrupted by these guerrillas and resistors. This is a living complex. If you'll notice, the barrels, the 55-gallon drum barrels, were smashed down, used as walkways to prevent them being mired down in the mud and so forth. This is a short segment of some of the arrestees. There were approximately 40 individuals arrested on this initial raid, identified primarily as workers. This is the dining facility. Behind that is the kitchen. Directly to the rear is the dormitory. Chronologically, this is out of sequence. This was a guerrilla camp that was subsequently raided when we discovered Loma, the site to the north of this complex. This is actually part of the laboratory complex. Some of the weapons that were seized were Uzi machine guns, Ingram machine guns, shotguns, carbines, radio equipment. As you'll notice on the map, there are also radio frequencies assigned to some of these sites. These individuals were in constant radio contact with each other. These are the open-walled construction, usually with a tin roof, of some of the laboratory processing sites, barrels of ether. They use quite a few plastic garbage cans with filtering papers and so forth in the processing of the cocaine. Another storage area. Here's the actual filtering in the conversion process. Various other chemicals, acetone being one, in conjunction with the ether. This was water that was stored on a 20-foot platform to constitute a gravity flow type operation. They used PCV piping or tubing. That's an ether storage shed in the jungle. You can see the canopy. 75 plastic trash cans, each one had approximately 20 kilograms of cocaine hydrochloride contained in it. There's some of the finished product packaged for ultimate shipment. Cocaine hydrochloride. These are spare light bulbs that were found in a storage room to facilitate the drying operation. Here's a drying table with the high-intensity light bulbs overhead. Some of the complexes we found have drying tables as large as 40 by 40 feet, covered in stainless steel. Some of the equipment, I believe later film footage will show heavy equipment. They had bulldozers, steamrollers, tractors, all which had been flown in by large airplanes, DC-3s, DC-4s. There's ether, also on a raised platform to facilitate the gravity flow concept, make it a lot easier to get it out of the barrels. One thing you may keep in mind as you view this film is the complex was spread out over a large area. This is subsequent destruction of the facilities, dynamiting the airstrip, burning the laboratory complex itself, the living strips. This was a plane that was found in the jungle, camouflaged underneath palm fronds and so forth. Here's some of the equipment that was there. The explosion we saw there a moment ago was caused by dynamite that had been put in there by the demolition expert, but apparently the soldiers that were lighting the fire weren't aware of it. Here you'll see a man fire some rounds into, what he's doing there is shooting holes in barrels of ether, which is highly flammable, as you can well see. And in order to let the ether leak out, which results in this type of destruction. That's the remnants of the living complex at Tanquelandia.
Now, perhaps, Agent Fredericks, using the hand-drawn map where you feel would be helpful, would you explain how this series of raids plus other investigative work which took place during this period shed some new insight into the relationship between the guerrillas and the cocaine organizations, as well as to the actual production of cocaine?
Certainly. As early as January of this year, we had specific information indicating that an individual by the name of Pascual Bravo Munoz, a major cocaine trafficker in Colombia, owned a complex accompanied by an airstrip that he had named Pascualandia after himself. This information came after an American citizen had been kidnapped in August of 1983 and held by the FARC, the Armed Revolutionary Forces of Colombia, a communist-oriented guerrilla organization. They subsequently released that individual, but after having lived with the guerrillas for 5 months, he gave a very comprehensive statement subsequent to that release. He has since written a book, and so we had information about Bravo Munoz. As you'll see, the laboratory located in the upper right-hand corner, Pascualandia, is exactly what we had been told previously. It was owned by Pascual Bravo Munoz. It is, in fact, named Pascualandia. El Diamante, the site directly below Pascualandia, came to our attention in January of 1983 when El Tiempo, a daily Bogota newspaper, reported a story whereby approximately 150 guerrillas from the FARC had allegedly raided El Diamante, a large ranch, in the attempt to kidnap the owners. They were going to hold the owners for ransom. Fortunately or unfortunately, depending on one's position, the owner and his family were not there at the time of the raid, and 18 other people were held captive. 4 planes were seized for a ransom of something over $400,000. So we had previous information on El Diamante. At the lower area, the location indicated now, Rodri, also known as Villa Coca, information developed indicated that Jose Gonzalo Rodriguez Gacha, also known as El Mexicano, a major trafficker in Colombia, owned that site. Subsequent to this raid, we have a statement by an individual who was arrested in Panama by the Panamanian National Guard in May of this year.
Before we get to that, Agent Fredericks, the individual which you've identified as having received information as being the owner of that lower base camp laboratory, was he one of the persons from DEA's intelligence analysis that was also present on the airstrip, the military airstrip in Nicaragua, at which Pablo Escobar, a major Colombian cocaine trafficker, was seen, and about whom there's been prior testimony?
Yes, sir, that's correct. Although I cannot personally identify this man, he has been identified to me by DEA intelligence analysts. He is shown in the lower row of photos reclining in front of a 55-gallon barrel and is obviously associated with Pablo Escobar Gaviria in the Nicaraguan operation.
Now, drawing your attention very quickly, again, back to Pascualandia, and you referred to an individual who was kidnapped and who has since written a book. did the persons occupying Pascualandia describe their relationship with the guerrillas and with the cocaine traffickers?
Not so much the persons occupying Pascualandia, I'm not privy to that knowledge, but the individual did indicate that his guerrilla captors had been involved in the production of coca, in the taxing of the narcotics traffickers, the coca growers, the coca processors, throughout this period of time, which fit a pattern of intelligence that we had previously received. Essentially, in exchange for the traffickers being able to operate in a given geographic area, due to the lack of police activity in this area, it's impossible. It's jungle area that heretofore was thought to be inhabited only by indigenous Indians, so the Amazon area, Amazon region. The traffickers could at will collect tax in order to permit the traffickers to operate in these areas. That information was confirmed by the kidnapped victim.
At the site which you've described as Loma, was there recovered a diary or a log which further described the relationship of counterinsurgents to the cocaine, or to the production of cocaine?
Yes, sir, that's correct. Before I do that, I would like to interject one thing for the Commission's benefit, is these other lab sites, Las Palmeras, Nuevo Horizonte, Tranquilandia itself, documentation indicated the involvement of individuals as Jorge Ochoa, who you've already heard testimony about yesterday, Pablo Escobar again, and another individual by the name of Francisco Barbosa. Now, as far as Loma, subsequent to its detection on April 4th and subsequent raid on April 6th of this year, there were no seizures of cocaine made at that location. It had been essentially abandoned. There were hundreds of empty barrels of ether, which indicated the activity that had been taking place at that location. But more importantly, we found an active FARC base camp, a guerrilla base camp approximately 1/2 mile east of the Loma site. It was obvious to the National Police and also a Colombian Army intelligence colonel who accompanied us on that raid that the two elements were living compatibly, side by side. The guerrilla camp being 1/2 mile away, the traffickers having a large runway that was able to bring in foodstuffs, whatever other supplies needed by the guerrillas and or the traffickers.
Did this reflect a change in the perceived relationship between the traffickers and the guerrillas?
At that point in time, it tended to corroborate the intelligence we had already received as far as a protection racket, if you will, that was being instigated by the guerrillas. Subsequently, however, last month, the middle of last month, a second raid was conducted on Loma based on continued activity in that area. And at that point in time, we did find a personal diary of a FARC member, a FARC guerrilla member, who indicated that the FARC guerrillas were in fact actively involved in the processing of cocaine, and they had actually taken over that Loma site. Between the point in time that was discovered on September 27th this year and actually raided on the 12th of October, the diary indicates that on October 2nd, the site was moved from La Loma to the guerrilla camp 1/2 mile east. I might also add that in that period of time, a new airstrip was built at the guerrilla camp between the initial raid on Loma in April and the subsequent raid in October.
One last point, Agent Fredericks. Does the physical layout of these base camp laboratories say anything about the method of operation of the cocaine organizations themselves?
I believe so. They all follow a pattern in the fact that each geographic area of responsibility, whether it be the airstrip, the living facilities, the laboratory complex, processing facilities, are separated physically and geographically from each other by some distance. In other words, if a worker was there to build buildings or was a specialist in electrical installations, he may very well live in the actual living complex but never have access and never have the ability to visit the laboratory processing facility. The same in turn would work with a pilot who may come in, be hustled into his living facility, and take a load out the next day without actually ever seeing the laboratory complex. And in the reverse, the laboratory workers wouldn't necessarily know who was coming in to make the pickups, wouldn't necessarily be able to identify aircraft coming and going. It's a built-in system of insulation.
Now, We've heard previously in earlier hearings about the way in which La Cosa Nostra is organized along very firm structural lines where responsibility is clear and where membership in a family is clear and permanent. In your view, Agent Fredericks, is that also true of these cocaine organizations, or is it not true?
In my experience with Colombian cocaine traffickers, there is a level of organization that may involve the very pinnacle, in other words, a handful of people at the top. Below that level, my experience shows that there are many workers who move between one organization and another. Essentially, I'm not very familiar with the LCN, but from what I do understand, if you have a soldier in an organization like that, he knows who he's working for. He knows who the family member, the head of that family is. It seems that in the Colombian organizations, a laboratory operator may work for a trafficker such as Pablo Escobar and not even be aware of it, simply because of levels of insulation. He may work in 1 month in one laboratory operation and the following month be changed to a completely different operation owned by a completely different organizational structure and not know actually who he's working for.
Okay, I have no further questions, Mr. Chairman.
Are there any questions from the members of the commission? Thank you, sir. We appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for the opportunity. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Agent Fredericks.